Thank you, Irene. Thanks for inviting me here on law school. Thanks for letting me sit next to Irene Getzia. I'm glad she spoke before me, so I count on her to give you the kind of information I would not be able to give you. So I can say whatever I want and you'll still be ahead of the game. I thought I would talk not specifically about the war in Iraq, but talk about something a little beyond that. To put it another way, you may recall that not long ago, Barack Obama, you recognize his name, Barack Obama spoke about how he was not just opposed to the war in Iraq, but he was opposed to the, as he put it, the mindset that led us into the war. And I was struck by that because I thought, well, yes, that is important. The mindset that led us into the war. Of course, I noticed very soon after that Barack Obama himself had not really understood the mindset that led us into the war, I'm sorry to say, because he, in talking about Iraq, was saying, well, we need to remove troops from Iraq and send a number of them to Afghanistan. I thought, oh, something wrong with that. That shows a mindset which has not understood that the problem is not just Iraq and not just the Iraq war. The problem is larger than that. The problem is the acceptance of the use of military force to solve problems in the world. The problem is war itself, not just the war in Iraq, but war. The problem is militarism. And you may notice that I don't want to just pick on Barack Obama, I pick on him because he's the one who raised the question of the mindset and then immediately departed from it and didn't carry it further, because that mindset is very common in the United States and among liberal circles. By liberal circles, I mean, I was looking at where? The New Yorker liberal. And the editor of the New Yorker says, but can anyone seriously doubt, talking about the possibility that Gore might become president, and sort of speaking wistfully of that possibility, can anyone seriously doubt that the Gore administration would have meant, well, an alternative universe? Well, that was promising, an alternative universe, in which, say, American troops were sent in as necessary invasion in Afghanistan, but not on a mistaken and misforgotten one in Iraq. Well, and then again, you know, in the New York Times, the Paul Krugman, who is a liberal and very astute on domestic economic policy, and very much opposed to the war in Iraq, but says in one of his columns, Iraq is a lost cause. Afghanistan, on the other hand, is a war we haven't yet lost. And it is just possible that new commitment of forces there might turn things around. Well, this is the mindset that is willing to accept, and obviously it doesn't take a lot of astuteness to accept now what the majority of Americans accept, that the war in Iraq is a disaster and is terrible, but a mindset that doesn't go beyond that. And Hillary Clinton certainly, just to even the scales today between Barack and Hillary. And Hillary Clinton certainly doesn't go beyond that mindset, because here she is speaking in this campaign, and she said, we can develop a coherent Iraq strategy and redeploy our troops. Where? To New York? No, it must be somewhere else in the world. It's redeploy our troops and repair our alliances so we can fight terrorism together. Not getting out of the mindset of sending troops somewhere, not getting out of the mindset that a main problem is their terrorism and not ours. So I want to talk about this mindset that accepts the idea of military action, and of war. And here we come up, and I think this is important because all of us who may campaign against the war in Iraq really have to think beyond that. When the war in Iraq is over, if it's ever over, when the occupation of Iraq is over, if it's ever over, after all, the French occupied Algeria for 140 years. We occupied the Philippines for 50 years, maybe in a certain sense we're still occupying it. But whenever the occupation, there may be one war behind us, but there will be the issue of where's the next war, where's the next redeployment of forces. And so we have to think, I think, at this point in our history, not just about this war and that war, but a war itself as the enemy of the human race. And that's a tough job because, especially in this country where we have a memory of good wars, we have a memory of humanitarian, now they call them humanitarian interventions, but we have a memory of humanitarian wars. And there are certain wars that are beyond reproach. You can't even discuss them. We can discuss Vietnam, we can discuss Iraq. We might even be able to discuss our heroic war against Panama, or even more heroic war against Grenada. But we can't talk about the Revolutionary War. Well, watch John Adams. Watch the long series on John Adams and the glorification of the American Revolution. We can't challenge the mayhem of the Civil War. Although the president of Harvard, to her, really to her credit, President Faust, written a book about the Civil War, but he concentrates on the horrible bloodletting of the Civil War. 600,000 people dead in the Civil War, and something which would be the equivalent of about 5 million dead in a civil war today in the United States. And a left historian reviewing it, talking about Eric Foman, who's done some very, very fine work in history, but he's very troubled by the fact that she concentrates on the horrors of the war and doesn't say anything about the political advantages of the war. That is, the ending of slavery. Well, in a certain, she doesn't really. He's troubled by that. He's troubled by what her emphasis. You can emphasize either one. And there's a certain point in the book where she does, in her way, recognize the issue of slavery by pointing out that the so-called end of slavery with the 13th Amendment and the 14th and 15th Amendment did not really end slavery. And the condition of black people in this country for the next 100 years was a condition of servitude and segregation and racism after 600,000 people died in the Civil War. So you're not supposed to say anything like that about the Civil War or about the Revolutionary War, certainly not about World War II, the good war, a war in which I participated because that's how I saw it as a good war, a war at the end of which I looked back and thought, and looked at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and looked at Dresden, and looked at the firebombing of Tokyo, and looked at the atrocities committed on both sides, and decided, well, World War II is not simply a good war, not simply a humanitarian war. It's morally much more complex than that.